So, a very good morning and welcome to everyone who's present here. First of all, I welcome you all to the Dais Global Yoga Festival in association with Yoga Mission and Yogis Without Borders. This is a 3-day event which starts today and ends on the 20th, and it celebrates the International Day of Education during the Learning Planet Festival. So it's a lot of people, a lot of amazing speakers, a lot of amazing panelists who have come together to put this yoga festival today. So as we begin, firstly, I would like to talk a little bit about the Dais. The Dais is an organization with a vision to empower people towards a better life. The achievement of SDGs and leaving no one behind is the core objective of the Dais, with a focus of environmental preservation, ensuring equality for all, improved education for children and youth, and creating a peaceful and prosperous world. And for us, it is an amazing opportunity to host a yoga festival for all of you. We are doing this festival in association with the Learning Planet Festival. The Learning Planet Festival was launched in 2020 by CRI, France, and UNESCO. The Learning Planet Festival is open to passionate learners of all ages. This is the third edition of the Learning Planet Festival, which celebrates the International Day of Education on 24th of January, featuring 400 local events and online activities co-organized with 200 partner organizations from around the world. So we hope you can go and check the Learning Planet Festival page and enjoy way more events. Talking about our partners, Yogi Without Borders and Yoga Mission. Yogis Without Borders is an international team of experts spreading the knowledge and practices of yoga tradition to anyone interested to transform his life through its methods. Yoga has always been a teaching that moves its practitioners and everybody it touches to go beyond the boundaries of humanity and has made for itself. Yoga has always been a teaching of constant transformation. It constantly changed itself and taught others how to evolve. At Yogis Without Borders, we unite yoga teachers and students from around the world for the sake of promoting old and developing ideas of yoga. Talking about our partner, Yoga Mission. Yoga Mission is an international charitable organization involved with residential and non residential schools and women's project, particularly in Varanasi. India serving 475 underprivileged women and children through Brahmarishi School of Yoga. We teach authentic yoga and philosophy courses as well as supporting subjects globally. Ancient education was very different from the modern education system. In ancient times, rishis, ascetics brought students out of individualism, irrespective of caste, creed, gender, or color, to realize the existent unity behind diversity. Yoga was the means to achieve the objective. The ancient education system was for the everlasting internal peace of mind, which consequently manifested infinite peace. We are all committed to bringing these life skills alongside the best education being available to all without discrimination. And with that, I again welcome you all to the Yoga Festival. Also, from India, wishing everyone a very, very, very happy Republic Day. Moving ahead, inviting today's speaker, Ms. Divya Prabha. Ms. Divya Prabha is devoted to yoga for life. She graduated from Oxford University, UK, with masters with honors in metallurgy and in science of material, and started illustrious career with top UK and American investment banks. Following the life-changing experiences, she left this behind, embarking on her spiritual journey with Brahmarishi Vishwatma Bhavaraji. She is traditionally trained and guided in Maha Yoga, Hatha, Mantra, Laya, and Raja Yoga, as well as has traditional Sanskrit education in Varanasi for the last 14 years, winning the gold medal for Shastri BA equivalent course and coming top of her university class during further studies in Prachin Vyakarna on Acharya course, MA equivalent. She has broadcast lectures and taken part in discussions on the radio and continues to teach in India as well and internationally. Thank you so much, Divya ji, for being today with us.
Thank you so much to the Dais for inviting us to be here and also sharing this festival with our partners, Yogis Without Borders. I'd like to start with a universal prayer, which comes in Sanskrit. Sarve bhavantu sukhalah, sarve santu niramayaha, sarve bhadrani pashyantu ma kaschit dukhabhag bhavet. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. In Sanskrit, we find many universal prayers, such as this one, which is telling us to praying for everybody to be happy, everybody to have good health and no obstacles, and for everybody to be without any form of pain. And this indeed is a great way to open a yoga festival, which is indeed what we're doing here. And it's such a great pleasure to be part of the Learning Planets Festival over this week, consisting of more than 400 events. This has been timed to coincide with the International Day of Education. And this is a really perfect link for yoga, because the very word education has two very important meanings. One, educare, which is what we understand modern education today, which is to put in knowledge. However, there's another meaning in Latin as well, coming from educare, which means to bring out from within. And this is what the ancient education system in India itself has been based on from ancient times, where it was about knowing yourself, knowing who you are, so that you could understand everything around you and being connected to that universal existence whilst manifesting it through your individual qualities. We've split the festival into 3 days with 3 themes. Today's theme is well-being, which is one of the core parts of the Learning Planet Festival, because with well-being, with a foundation of knowing who you are, and with a foundation of peace, then we're ready for real learning. And in Sanskrit, when we talk about health, it actually comes from the word swastha. In Sanskrit, that means is swatishtati iti swastha, which means to be stable in yourself, rooted in yourself. And that really is the core of physical health, mental health. And this is what yoga is seeking to bring. So the extraordinary thing is that yoga is so many thousands of years old, but yet it seems to as fresh today as if it has been invented in the last couple of years. But it has that ever fresh quality, ever new quality, that in not only every century, but in every decade, in every year, yoga is a practical tool that we can bring into our lives to give us a real foundation for life that comes from this ancient indigenous culture, without any boundaries, without any divisions of religion or caste or country, language, or gender, or age even. And it's not about how much you can bend your body, or how long you can do yoga for, but it's about giving whatever you can to the practices to give you first peace of mind, a healthy body, enabling you to focus on the deeper and more important aspects of life, and how to be free from the pain and suffering of life that gives us that instability inside. So I'd now like to introduce to you our main speaker for this opening session, and it's our great pleasure to bring to you the best-selling author, Dr. Baswati Bhattacharya, who you'll be able to read her details in the chat. So we give a very short overview for everyone, but to give you an idea, she's not just an Harvard educated, licensed, board certified physician from New York, Also, she has a practice in Benares and also in Paris. She's also been a Fulbright scholar. She's a visiting associate professor at at Cornell Medical College in New York. And she has advised the FDA on how Ayurveda can play a role in modern medicine. There's so many things. She's recently a director of Indica Academy in the US and in India itself. But there's a whole list you can read in the chat. She's a great speaker. She's a great intellectual who's down to earth and knows what of her knowledge base, what she can do to serve humanity, which ultimately is a way to use our lives in a purposeful way. So we're very grateful and blessed to have Dr. Bhaswati Bhattacharya ji with us today, coming live from Varanasi.
Thank you, Lucy ji, Divya Prabha ji. Hello, bonjour, hola, buenos dias, and namaskar to all of you. I am Dr. Bhaswati Bhattacharya, and I'm very pleased, and I thank all of the organizers for inviting me to speak today about yoga and in the context of Ayurveda and how we can use it to better ourselves, our people around us, our communities, and in fact, the entire world. So as Lucy G mentioned, I call her Lucy G because I know her from her PhD studies here in Benares, and that's how I met her. As she mentioned, I'm a physician, and the way that I came into holistic medicine is that when I started studying medicine, I realized that they were not teaching us how to help people stay well and how to stay connected with themselves. They were actually teaching us, quite honestly, they wwere teaching us how to find situations in which we could give people drugs and surgeries. And so all of us medical students started discussing this in the hours after class, that how come they don't teach us some of the other tools like yoga, like acupuncture, like massage, like meditation? Why don't they teach some of this? Because this could really help people in the first stages of their diseases before it gets bad. And all of us, were quiet, and then we shyly finally got the courage to ask the professors, and half of them told us, be quiet and just learn what we have to tell you because this is the curriculum. And the other half said to us, yes, it's true that those things work, but we can't teach them here. And some of them said we can't teach them because they don't make money for the system. And some of them said we can't teach them because there's no evidence or there's no systematic way. And as an Indian, as a Bengali who grew up part of the time in India and part of the time in the United States, traveling a lot, I was pretty willing to argue that in Gurukul, in the student teacher, I won't even say teacher, in the sacred relationship and physical, emotional, spiritual relationship between student and teacher who is a guru meaning to pull yourself out from the darkness by someone who knows how to do it. In that sacred relationship, you can actually learn a lot of things that will prevent disease. And it's not that it's not known or there's no evidence or any of the arguments they were saying. Actually, it's very true that it's possible, but it's not propagated. And so I realized I was starting a career in debate rather than just in medicine, in which I was advocating for patients who don't know how to argue for themselves, who are too depressed to cry for help, who are not in that place where they can stand up for their rights, and they come desperately to the doctor in an assumption that the doctor is going to solve their problems and take care of them. And it was actually very difficult for me because my personal life that had yoga, meditation, and holistic medicines was very different from my professional life. And I realized I needed to blend them and to teach people, not only educare, which is to learn and to put the knowledge in, but docere, which is where the word doctor comes from, which means to bring people to a place where they can be taught. So to teach people, That means you have to have the right words, the right language, and the right mode for the person at the level they're at. And so for the last several years, since I finished medical school, I realized that actually they don't teach you anything about food. So I went and learned nutrition, and they don't really teach you much about natural, non-pharmaceutical chemicals. So I went and learned about Ayurveda, and I actually learned the art of medicine making and how to put metals and minerals back in the body that are missing, which is called Rasa Shastra. And from everything I've learned, I'm going to share a few very practical things for those of you who are listening. One is, if you do a daily practice for yoga, you have to do it daily. I know that sounds funny, but there are a lot of people that say they do regular yoga regularly. And when I ask them, well, how was your practice this morning? Then they say, well, I didn't do it this morning. And how was your practice on Saturday? Well, we had guests come over, so I didn't do it on Saturday. The commitment to yoga means doing it every day. It doesn't mean you have to do 108 Surya Namaskars, but it does mean you need to get onto the sacred place that is away from the rest of the world, which is called an asana. Some people call that a yoga mat. Some people use a dhuri or a blanket, but it's a special place in which we isolate ourselves. It's simply usually just a carpet or a blanket, but it's a special place where we isolate ourselves from the rest of the world. And we take permission to go inside, what is called adhyatmika. And so to do that daily is so important. And to do it several times a day is really good for those of us who have, 14 children, or we have 2 full-time jobs, or we have a lot of things going on in our lives. And the most convenient times to do it are in the morning, either first thing when you wake up, or just after you shower when your senses are clean, and to just sit for a few minutes. So people will say to me, well, how long should I do yoga? How long should I meditate? And I tell them every day is different, but it's not about the amount of time in the physical, the clock time in the world. It's about the inner time. So up until about 150 years ago, when clocks came into existence and when time zones came into existence, there were no clocks. The clock basically went from sunrise to sunset. And those moments in between were determined by you and what you thought. There was no standard convention. And so we sat until we went deep enough that we connected with our minds. So our thinking mind connected with our emotional mind, connected with our soul. And our body responded to it. And there was a need for prana. The prana is the consciousness of the breath coming in and out. And that, for some people, can mean 20 seconds. They can get there, they can be there, and then they can come out of it, and their time of yoga is done. For some people, they cannot get to that place, and the use of breath work, pranayama, is very important. And for some people, they need to move into the physical poses to get their body to align with their mental selves. And so different people have different practices. Is it separate from Ayurveda? It's actually not. One of the wonderful things about Indian knowledge systems is that they are actually seamless and they all make sense to each other, unlike the modern sciences, which many of us have learned, where biochemistry people don't know how to talk with pharmacology people who don't know how to talk with organic chemistry people who don't know how to talk with geology people. And all the different sciences have their own terminologies, their own theories, and the theories sometimes clash with each other. But in ancient traditional Bharatiya sciences, and I'm saying Bharat so you don't think about India, since Bharat extended from Afghanistan all the way across the subcontinent down into the Indo islands, which are called Indonesia. That entire part of the world that was kind of on the rim, the northern rim of the Indian Ocean, they all participated in this wonderful knowledge of ancient systems that were seamless. And so yoga principles and Ayurveda principles were completely integrated. So people would breathe on a very heavy, cold, humid day, a kapha day, like many of us are experiencing in January in the Northern Hemisphere. those were the days that they would start by taking something that would lower the phlegm. So maybe they would start with some hot water containing some herbs that would be demulsifying, like muleti, which is called yashti madhu in Sanskrit. Or they would put some cinnamon in it, which is warming and very good for the body. They would boil that water, and then after the water was starting to cool and they were ready to drink it, they would put some raw organic honey in it. And that would clear out the phlegm. Why is that important for yoga? Why is that relevant? Because when you're trying to breathe, it's really nice if your nose and mouth are open and that phlegm is gone. So on those days, that's a really nice thing to do. Meanwhile, if you're sitting in Southern Kerala right now and the rains have come, it's a little bit cooler, but it's not so phlegmy. It's more cool and cold. And so those people will have some warming spices like ginger, like cinnamon again, but they will boil the water and not drink it hot. They will drink it just warm, and they don't need the honey. Many of them will use sesame oil on their body because it's slightly warming and it moistens the body from that cold and that humidness. But it's also called the king of oils because sesame oil, unlike coconut oil or mustard oil or any of the other oils, sesame oil is called til. And it's called the king of oils because it goes into the human body and it actually scrapes out the phlegm. And so in the winter, in January, February, to take that sesame oil and give yourself a nice massage before you shower is a lovely way to bring down the vata from the windiness and to bring some warmth in, and also to clean out all that schmutz, I'll say, that's a technical word, that will be sitting in the body in January, February, where it's cold, or up in the mountains. So these kind of doshic influences, the use of vata, pitta, and kapha, understanding of your body, of the spices, of the foods, and of the environment and the weather around you, were seamlessly brought into the setup of the kind of yoga you would do that day. Will you have more asanas in your practice today, or will you spend more time in dhyana, in quiet meditation? Or maybe it's a day that you just want to do pranayama and just get the breath in and out, so that you can get rid of some of those ripus. Ripus are these kind of negative emotions that tend to build up because of usually events that have happened in our environment. So yoga and Ayurveda were brought together and kept together through thousands of years until, it started falling apart when the conquests came and started making things like Sanskrit illegal. But before that time, the way of learning was not to obviously go and watch a YouTube video. It was to sit with someone who knew and could watch you and say, okay, the way you're taking in your breath is not the optimal way. This is how to do it. So the first guru is usually the mother, but a guru who knows the practices would teach. And then that relationship of gratitude that you have taken time to teach me began to form what was called the Gurukula in that particular village, and people knew to send to that wise person. That teacher, that not necessarily a sannyasin or a sadhu, but that person who's a wise man could be in any field, but usually they knew more than one field, more than one what we call discipline. And so they were able to help us not only do yoga to bring ourselves inside, that adhyatmika, but also to work with others around us, to do seva work. It's so important to help others who don't know to learn what we know. And then to help the world, many of us think we can't change the world. The way to change the world is to change yourself. And so waking up early and greeting the sun, which in the Brahma Muhurta, which is considered to be the best way to align your clock genes, is a way of taking care of yourself and bringing yourself health. What are clock genes? In the modern medical language, these are parts of your DNA that are in each of your cells and tell them when to make certain proteins, certain enzymes. And each of your organs is different and they form a kind of factory. So if you don't wake up early where the clock genes are set to the sunrise, then you're not going to get that cascade of effects. And that's actually what we see in diseased people. So I wrote a book about dinacharya, the daily routine, and I've had Now, thousands of people are writing to me and telling me I started doing my early morning routine in preparation for yoga. And I found that my thyroid problems went away. I found that my arthritis went away. I found that my irritable bowel syndrome went away. I found that this disease that the doctors had told me was permanent has now gone away. Blood pressure problems and various, inflammation in the body. So as a doctor, I can tell you that my journey from medical school, where I figured it out that they don't teach us prevention, to the journey of bringing yoga and Ayurveda together, I will leave you with 3 things that you can think about integrating in your life. One is, do you do a proper early morning routine? Do you wake up with sunrise and go through cleaning your 5 senses and taking care of those senses so that you can participate in the world? Do you clean the world around you, your bedroom, making your bed, setting out fresh clothes for the day, those things? Number 2, do you have a teacher that you can go to make sure that your yoga practice is right for you and not something you learn generically in some yoga class or some YouTube video? Having a teacher is a very important part of doing proper yoga. And the third lesson is, do you go inside regularly? Do you do the inner work? What we refer to in so many different words in yoga, but do you take that time? Or are you running around all over the place doing way too much, but disconnected and not in yourself, not sitting in yourself? So self is swa, and being with yourself is stha, and swastha is a synonym for health. And with that, I'd like to say thank you very much. If you'd like to ask questions to me, you can find me very easily by typing in my name. I have several YouTube videos that will teach you more. I don't want to leave you hanging if you have questions. You can also type them in the chat, as I'll be here for another few minutes. I just want to thank Keshavji and Lucy Ji and Muskan Ji and the entire Dais team for inviting me to share some thoughts with you and bringing me into this wonderful festival. Namaskar to all.
I hope I'm audible now. Yeah, thank you so much, ma'am. And it was a wonderful session. We came to know a lot more. I mean, I had not interpreted that swasta can be broken up into 2 words. And yeah, thank you so much. And now I would like to invite Divyaji.
Thanks, Dr. Basuti Bhattacharya ji. I can't recommend her book more highly enough. And as you said, she's very easily available to be contacted. So what we have, we're coming to the end of our opening session. So let me just give you a brief overview of what we have over the next 3 days. Today, I'll be giving a couple of sessions, one about the importance of yoga in today's modern world, and another session which will be practical as well as talking about yoga as a foundation for life. And then we are very lucky to have Jyoti Jo Manuel, who's been teaching yoga for the last 40 years. For the last 20 years, she's been particularly involved with Special Yoga Global, which she founded, which has today's title is Yoga for Anxiety, how to reduce anxiety in these times. And then we'll be joined by Nina Rao, who is the famous chanter who chants with Krishna Das Ji. You may have heard of Ram Das and Neem Karoli Baba. So Nina Ji is the person after Krishna Das Ji, who's the famous chanter from that group. She'll be joining us as well later on today. Tomorrow we'll be having Tejas Lakhani for the Art of Joy. So today's sessions are about well-being, wellness, and tomorrow is joy. So we start with the Art of Joy, with Tejas Ji, followed by Diana Gladka from Yogis Without Borders, who will be looking at the history and psychosomatic effects of pranayama. And we'll be finishing with the very well-known yogi Andrew Seeley, who will be giving us an invigorating vinyasa flow. You'll be joining us from Costa Rica tomorrow evening, depending on where you are in the world. And the third day, the 28th, is the day of peace. We'll be starting off with myself with thought and breath are twins. We'll be which will be pranayama exercises, breathing exercises, practically, and also why it works. And followed by Charlotte Martinus from Teen Yoga Foundation in the UK, who's involved with all the governments across Europe, bringing yoga into educational institutions, and has been one of the main groups lobbying for yoga in the EU and in the UK. And we'll be finishing with our final global meditation for peace and our closing session on the later on in the day on the 28th. So we really hope that you'll be joining us over the next couple of days. Feel free to ask your questions anytime. And I thank you all for being here. We're going to close with a little video to give you a flavor, a taste of the ancient culture, the roots of yoga from the city of Kashi, which is the oldest continuous civilization on the planet, to give you an idea how old yoga really is in these modern times.
Thank you so much, Divyaji.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Divyaji. That was a wonderful video. So moving ahead, I will hand over to you for the next session, which starts right now. And yeah, I can see a lot of questions for you, so everyone's eager to know.
So to To mark the start of the next session, I'm going to start with another Sanskrit prayer. And thank you all so much for everybody that's just been here. Om Purnamadaha Purnamadam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So welcome to this session, which is yoga and the importance of yoga in today's modern world. Before I go into my presentation, I just want to tell you why I've used this prayer. This prayer is telling us about that everything around us is infinite. We are infinite. And when you take something from the infinite, it's still infinite. And this philosophy of yoga comes from a time before any divisions, any names of countries, any religions. There was no religion. The religion's a very modern thing, relative in the history of the real history of the world. Many, many thousands of years ago, this was started in an indigenous culture when they simply understood that the Mother Earth is our mother, and that all beings are brothers and sisters, and that consciousness is our father. It doesn't matter what you call it, what tradition you come from. It's that if you consider that we're each taking breaths, each single one of us breathes, no matter whether you're sitting in France, whether you're sitting in India, America, Australia, we're all taking breath from one source. And that breath is given to us without any conditions, without any expectations. There's no transaction. We're simply given according to our need for breath. It means that what's in you is in me, because we're filled with breath. That is what is driving our lives. And that takes me into the beginning of this little presentation I put forward for you. And then we can go into questions after that, as per your wish. So these are our children that we teach in Varanasi. So as I said, yoga comes from a time and has been given to us by seers over thousands and thousands of years, which just understand that there's humanity, that it's timeless. And the extraordinary thing is that I mentioned in the opening ceremony today and in the showcase last week, the extraordinary thing is that if you look through history, we'll see phases of particular types of exercises, particular types of philosophy, particular new age thoughts that maybe last 10, 20, maybe 50, maybe 100 years. The extraordinary thing is that in every period of time, we see the existence and the practice and the use of yoga as a tool to find peace in our lives. If you look at your own life and you look at what it is that inspires you to perform any action, you'll find that the root cause is going to be peace. Oh, sorry, I'm not sharing it properly on the screen. If you look at the root cause, you'll find that the root cause of your actions is peace and happiness. Every single person, no matter where they are on earth, is always seeking peace and happiness. And so what we have got to understand is how to attain that peace and happiness in a long-lasting way that is going to be permanent, because what happens actually in life is that we are experiencing temporary peace and happiness. It's always fleeting. It's changing. Sometimes it's peaceful, sometimes we're sad, sometimes we're happy. And that's because we're always looking at external means of giving us that peace and happiness. And there's a lot of reasons of why we're not feeling that inner stability in all times, which we'll look at as we go through today's session. So yoga gives us a tool to connect to that which is permanent, our real selves inside, to experience that stability, to experience that integration, and to realize that unity and diversity, and realizing that we're just one part of one family, and it's called humanity. And, you know, it's very easy in life to, at various points, to get overwhelmed with the issues that we're facing. Maybe it's exam stress, maybe it's stress in getting a job, maybe it's a stress in the job that we've got, or stress that we're facing in the family or our community, or we're feeling discriminated against, maybe as a woman, or because of our religion, or whatever it might be. It's not uncommon to face stress in life. But when we're able to take a step back from our life and consider this planet, consider this universe, and that we're just a very tiny part of this universe, and of, as Stephen Hawking says, of many universes. And there are these ancient texts in India called the Upanishads, meaning to sit near teacher, that give us a couple of beautiful analogies, helping to put life in context. The first one, it says, is that life is like a river or a stream flowing between two banks, one of birth and the other of death. And it's just flowing along. And the other is, I'm going to chant the Sanskrit because the sound has special vibrations. Yata nadya syandamana samudre stam gachanti. Yata nadya syandamana samudre stam gachanti namarupe vihaya. Tata vidwan namarupat vimukta parat param purusham upaiti divyam. So this is telling us that just as rivers flow into the ocean, giving up their names and their forms, you can't distinguish a river's parts in the ocean once it's flown in. And in the same way, when we get connected to our real selves, that being able to put aside our individuality doesn't mean not to have individuality, but not to be attached to that individuality, getting absorbed into that infinite quality of consciousness, being able to understand this universe as one big family, and that we're part and parcel of this ocean, and we are like waves rising and falling in the ocean. So the ocean is always there with us, and we rise and we fall, we rise and we fall like waves, meaning birth and death. And that helps us to put what we face in life a little bit more in context, being able to see things from a bigger perspective. And then sometimes our problems don't quite seem so big and unconquerable, realizing that really everybody's with us, everybody's here to support us, and that we're part and parcel of one big family. And this is foundation concept of yoga. And as I say, it's been taught over many thousands of years in so many different ways. Now, some of you might be wondering, what's this word yoga? And yoga is such a well-known word in so many different languages now, it can be easy to be unaware of what the word yoga actually means. And yoga comes from Sanskrit. There's actually a dictionary that's 5,000 years old that says yoga has two meanings. One is samadhi, and the other is yogi. So in the meaning of yoga and in the meaning samadhi, samadhi simply means stable intellect, stable wisdom. And yoga means to join. Join to what? To you, yourself, within. And in yoga philosophy, that's described as yoga chitta vritti nirodha, which means that yoga is the means to overcome the modifications of the mind, modifications of the chitta, which is like you're in the individual form of your mind, and to become limitless, unlimited possibilities. And so when we talk about how we're going to live our lives, it's important to realize that if peace is not in our present, it's not going to come into our future, because every past makes our present and every present makes our future. So in the process of yoga, we talk a lot about living in the moment, to live in the present. And even the moment I say the present, it's already become the past. So it's very important to realize that every breath that we have in life is priceless. There's nothing we can do to buy a single breath. And we get breath without any conditions from this source of breath that is the same over the entire planet. And if we look at another school of philosophy, Sankhya Yoga, it told us that the purpose of life is itself is to understand, to get free of the three kinds of pain: the individual pain, the collective pain, like earthquakes and things like that. An individual pain you can understand, for example, like COVID, is something that, whilst there's a collective effect, not everybody is affected in the same way. And the third kind of pain is that pain of the separation from ourselves within. If you think about, there's a great mantra in the Vedas. If you think about what we face within when we're troubled, it's like there's an inner battle. And the Vedas gave us a wonderful mantra, you know, maybe was it 10,000 years ago? Was it 30,000 years ago? Who knows? It's very, very old. They said, Ashta Chakra Naudwara Devanam Purayotya. It said that your body consists of 9 gates: 2 eyes, 2 ears, 2 nostrils, mouth, and 2 lower gates. And through these gates, we're expending energy all the time. So like when we meditate, we close our eyes, we close our mouth, and it reduces the energy being expended externally. It says that we have 8 chakras going up the spine. We have Muladhara, Swadhisthana, Manipur, Anahat, Vishuddha, Lalana, Agya, and Brahma chakra. And it says the aim of life is to go through these chakras and to realize that this body is the dwelling place of the divine. Divine means what? In Sanskrit, the word divine is devata. And devata means that which is always giving. Always giving. That's actually what a devata is. The sun's giving. The wind's giving. The air is giving. It's giving us life. The sun is giving us life. And the name of it is Ayodhya. Ayodhya in Sanskrit means na yodhya Ayodhya. Yodhya means battle. No, so Ayodhya means where there's no battles, because our mind is fighting an inner battle in every moment of our lives. Should we do, should we not do? It's very rare. Even in sleep, our mind is wandering in dream. And so getting to that state of calm, quiet, balance, stability is what they call Ayodhya. And that condition is within us. And yoga is a very easy, practical tool that requires no belief system, that scientifically is able to heal your body. And for example, in saliva stress tests, cortisol stress tests, for example, we see that stress is reduced through the practices of asanas. It's also reduced through asanas, meaning postures. It's also reduced through the practices of pranayama, of breathing. It's also reduced through the practices of chanting. It's also reduced, chanting mantras, that is, and is also reduced through the practices of meditation. Just these simple practices are found to reduce your stress levels. So yoga is a very practical tool that doesn't expect you to believe anything except for try it out, these practices, and see if it helps you. So you might have seen lots of different schools of yoga, and I just give you some brief definitions about yoga. Ashtanga literally means 8 limbs, and yoga doesn't just encompass physical or mental exercises, but it also starts off with yama and niyama, which ties in with what Bhaswati was talking about in the opening session, is like that, for example, that cleanliness, that truthfulness, non-stealing, how you behave with yourself and how you behave in society is the very first step of yoga. Then it goes on to postures called asana, which we'll look at shortly, pranayama, breathing exercises, pratyahara, withdraw from the senses, and dharana, dhyana, and samadhi, which are the internal limbs of yoga, which are concentration, meditation, and samadhi. And hatha yoga, you may also have heard about, is actually related with the breath, because hatha comes from 2 Sanskrit bijas, seed mantras, hum and thum. So the right nostril is connected with the sun and the left with the moon, the right with hot, the left with cold, the right with Rajaguna and the left with Tamaguna. And when these 2 breaths become balanced, because actually these breaths are constantly changing in pressure. Sometimes one is dominant, sometimes the other is dominant. And this is how we can change the temperature in our system. This is how we can improve our digestion. This is how we can get ourselves to be calm, comfortable, and quiet by changing the domination of the nostrils. And then ultimately through the practices of like postures and breathing exercises, pranayama, can actually get these balanced. So this really is important, because this is what is called hatha. And I'll come on to that when we go into the breathing exercises very briefly. So I've mentioned, that we're facing a lot of issues in life. In fact, especially since the last 2 years, especially in young people, we're seeing increasing levels of depression, whether you look at India, whether you look at America, whether you look at Europe, or whether you look at Australasia. It doesn't care what color your skin is. It doesn't care whether you're rich or poor. It doesn't care what part of society you come from, where you live, how old you are, or what your gender is. Depression can be a challenge to anybody. Anxiety can be a challenge to anybody. So what's the cause, of this suffering? And it's very often to do with desires that are arising in the mind, satisfied through the senses, but being a very fleeting experience. And so we only get a fleeting rush of joy. And after that, then we again feel that emptiness, that listlessness, that lack of direction. And so one of the key things that we get through yoga, which you'll be very surprised to know, that through doing postures, you can actually in time become in control of your desires by redirecting your desires. And if we look at yoga philosophy, it actually gives us a very scientific approach to what is causing us all this pain. And they said, Vrittaya Panchate Klishta Klishta. It says that the vrittis, which are like the modifications of the mind, which is something that we look so carefully at in modern day psychology and psychotherapy. It says there are 5 kinds. And these 5 kinds have 2 outcomes. One is painful, and the other is not painful, an absence of pain. And what are these 5? Pramana Vipreya Vikalpa Nidra Smritya. I'm using a lot of the Sanskrit terminology because I see that we have a lot of people in the audience today who are of Indian origin. So I want you to feel the sounds of these Sanskrit vibrations too, and I hope that everybody else is enjoying them as well. So these are proof, correct evaluation, misconception, false knowledge, speculation, should I, shouldn't I, is it, isn't it, that really eats up so much of our energy, deep sleep as well, and memory. And you'll know very well, if anyone who's had the opportunity to go into any character development sessions where they look at group sessions and emotions and these kind of things, you'll be aware that when we bring a memory into the present, it also brings an associated emotion, perhaps as extreme as at that time, whether joyful or painful, or through the passage of time diminished. But whatever it may be, memory and all of these things, they bring emotions into our present. They can also be leading to anger, which we'll be coming on to a moment. So yoga, the different steps of yoga are able to take us beyond these 5 modifications of the mind so that we are able to flow from our intellect, our ego, and our mind without being troubled by the ripples, so that we can have a peaceful experience. And the Bhagavad Gita tells something that when I explain it, you'll see that even that's taught in karate and judo. So I'll just sing it for those of you who are listening. Jayato Vishayan Punsa Sangasteshu Bajayate Sangat Sanjayate Kama Kamat Krodo Bajayate Krodo Bhavati Sammoha Sammohat Smriti Brahma Smriti Brahma Shata Bhuttina Shobhutina Shat Pranashyati. So this is from a book called the Bhagavad Gita, which is a great text of a conduct of living. And it tells us that there's 7 stages of downfall, starting with concentrating on the external objects, getting, and from that leading to being in the sung of these things, which leads to the desire for those things, which, whether fulfilled or unfulfilled, leads to anger. So from the desire to anger, from the anger to delusion, being completely absorbed in that delusion, which leads to forgetting who you are, which leads to the destruction of your intellect. You're not able to think straight anymore, which leads to destruction of you. And if you've had the misfortune, either of yourself or watching someone else losing their temper, like a little child throwing a tantrum, or even an adult, which is not that uncommon, when people are not aware of being able to express themselves in a meaningful way, to communicate their needs and their wishes, it can lead to anger from the desire. And that anger, is what we're told in even the practices of karate and judo, that no matter if you lose your temper, you've lost the battle, you've lost the fight, because after that you are completely out of control. You're not able to make wise decisions. So if you're ever getting into a situation, yoga is also teaching us that if you're getting into a situation where stress levels are rising, where or even anger has blasted, take a step back, take a deep breath, collect yourself, restabilize yourself, so that you can think about what to do next, what to say next. Because once we've lost our temper, we can do and say anything, which we may regret and often do regret later. So I mentioned that this ayodhya, this again fits in with this idea that really what we are is the place of no battles, where our real selves are, where we know who we are. And through knowing who we are, we're able to know everybody else. So this is really why we'd want to do yoga, is to be able to get that stability, to dispel that cloud of darkness, to uncover that peace and happiness, which is our real nature that's always there. But through the modifications of our mind, we are focused on the external effects and not realizing that the whole capacity, that peace and happiness, is within us, in all times. And really, we're like this tree rooted in the ground, where a storm comes, shakes the tree, but it never loses its roots. And so the practices of yoga enable us to connect to that stability, to be aware of what we really are, and so that we can get to a place where we're always peaceful, no matter what is happening outside us. And it doesn't mean that we don't have compassion. In fact, in that we have more compassion, more empathy, because we're realizing where it's coming from. Because when we know who we are, imagine there's a tank of water with waves on it. And in that water, there's mud. So when there's wave, all that mud shakes up and you can't separate the mud from the water. It just looks like muddy water. You don't know really what that is. But when stability comes, when the waves stop moving, when it becomes calm and quiet, you're able to look into that tank of water and you go, oh, there's clean water and there's mud. The water wasn't really mud. That mud is a separate thing. And when you know that about yourself, then you're able to understand others. And that comes into this intellect. The intellect is really like a colorless crystal, no matter who you are. And what happens is this colorless crystal gets color covered up by the effects of nature. So there's, like in yoga, we say there's three qualities of nature: Rajaguna, Tamaguna, and Satguna. So Rajaguna is that energeticness, that excitability, that inspiration into action. So sometimes that's useful, but also in excess, that also can be like the anger. Tamaguna is like stability, but also can be inertia and laziness. And Satguna is purity itself, like this colorless crystal. And the nature of the intellect is that even when we're wrong, we believe we're right. What we believe to be truth is always going to be what we believe to be truth. People can't change us to change the way we think and what we see as truth. And I'll explain why that is in just a moment. And so that is why there's in English a great phrase: a man convinced against his will be of the same opinion still. So what happens is that we have these three qualities: Rajaguna, Tamaguna, and Satguna. So like the overactivity, the inertia, stability, and purity, meaning like truth itself. And each one of us has a different combination of these three. So someone might have a little bit more Rajaguna, someone might have a little bit more Tamaguna, someone might have just more Satguna, or someone might be balanced between the three. And so that's understand that like a vibration that is someone's individuality. I'm not talking about individual qualities and skills, like someone's a great artist, someone's a great listener, someone's a great sports person, someone's a great writer, someone's a great homemaker, whatever. Everybody's got a talent. And in this life, we find out, we uncover what our talents are. This is something different. When I'm talking about the individuality, the gunas, I'm talking about the disbalance that prevents us from seeing things as they are. So imagine that one person has got like a red energy, and someone else has got a blue energy, and someone else has got this crystal clarity. Underneath, everyone's got this crystal clarity, every single human being. But for the purposes of this example, let's look at some different individuals that on top of that crystal, you've got someone who's like wearing red lenses. You can see my glasses are colors here, but imagine these lenses were red for one group of people and different shades of red as well. And imagine another group is blue shades of these lenses. And what happens is if we put a yellow object in front of us, the person with the red goes, oh, look, that's orange. And the blue one says, no, 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 no. And you've got that completely wrong. It's green. And then the person who's colorless says, but it's yellow. Now, the person who's colorless can see that the red one is seeing it orange because of the red nature of their individuality. But without wanting to change that person, it just accepts that their energy is red, they're seeing orange, and their energy is blue, they're seeing green. Because when you're in this uncovered state where there's just crystal clarity, you can see things for what they are. You also have a great acceptance and compassion for all beings, no matter what. So yoga, through these breathing exercises and these postures and through meditation and this way of living, you know, with authenticity, with truthfulness, cleanliness, etc., enables us all to get to the point where we go, oh, and it was yellow all along. And this red lenses and blue lenses is why we have breakdowns of communication, and why a certain group of people all are going to agree in general amongst themselves, and another group of people is going to also agree all amongst themselves. And that's why, you know, you have different parties in politics. That's why we're having different groups across the world with having different ways of living. But ultimately, what we want to get to is that harmony where we have understanding for each other. And that comes from when we're integrated within ourselves so that we can understand what everybody is around us. And that also, you know, with the, you know, ancient traditions of sustainability is when we can really have a sustainable planet. Until then, we're always going to have different factions who have different opinions, different ways of implementing, and within groups, disagreements about how to implement and everything. So really the secret of finding this inner peace is within us. And when it's within us, then it can spread to around us by just the vibration coming from you. It can be dispelling that darkness that obscures the light, when we call it the light of knowledge, from people's intellect. And so a yogi is really that person who's like stable within themselves, having stable intellect, who's beyond the pairs of opposites of pleasure and pain, who's without attachment, without anger, without fear, who is balanced, whether they're in auspicious or inauspicious circumstances, who's beyond the pairs of love and hate. And it exists in that really that condition where it's loving everything and everyone, and is like a tortoise who can withdraw the limbs at will and also bring out the limbs at will. And that's a representation of the senses. So being able to control our senses is also the quality of a yogi, that person in whom there's yoga, which means stable wisdom, stable intellect, connected to them real selves. So how do we do these practices? I mentioned that we have, truthfulness, non-stealing, etc., as part and parcel of yoga. And it's really, if you could sit down and write a list of the ideal qualities of a human being, you'd really end up with these qualities, irrespective of what culture you come from, what part of the world you come from, the qualities that are really beneficial for all human beings. And then we have the physical practices of a posture. And you'll be surprised to know that the definition of a yoga posture is not anything to do with how much can you bend your body. Can you emulate an Instagrammer beautiful photo in yoga? No, it says a posture is that which is comfortable and stable. And that means not just physically, but also mentally. So it's important to be able to not to bend your body as much as you can, but to, in a posture, to go to the point which is comfortable for you. And you'll get the same benefit as someone who's able to do the splits. If you can only just move your legs a little bit apart, if you're doing the maximum effort that you can, then you'll find great benefits. And pranayama, which is basically having found a stable position, balancing the inhalation and the exhalation in the subtle. We have three bodies. We have physical, subtle, and causal. So in the physical, balancing the breath through these nostrils. And there's lots of different practices like Anoma Viloma, Bastrika, which is a heating pranayama, because it literally means bellows breath. Or whether we're talking about on a subtle level between the pran and the apan. And that naturally takes us to a position where we are able to withdraw from the senses. And as long as we are alive, we have breath. It comes in the very first moment when when we leave the womb and when that umbilical cord stops pulsing. And the very last thing to leave us in life is breath. If the ventilator, if you're in the ICU and the ventilator is turned off, if we've reached the end of life, that very quickly the pulse will be gone and this existence of our individual being is gone. So it's very precious. And if we can control our thought, we can control our breath. And if we can control our breath, we can control our thought. So it's kind of like a chain process. So what happens in these modern times? Depression, anxiety, tension. What's actually happening is this tension is creating heat in the head, which is disbalancing our system, leads to improper breathing, not getting proper oxygen into our lungs. The lungs start inflating less and less. And so the capacity to recharge the oxygen is lost. Carbon dioxide starts increasing in the body, and that is making us feeling lazy, tired, maybe pain, and has things like blood pressure increasing, so many consequences. And this is why I said, if you feel that you are losing your temper or getting very stressed, take a step back, take a deep breath and reverse this process. Because what happens when we reverse this process through breathing exercises is that we start increasing the oxygen flow. We're getting more oxygen into the system, thinning the blood, balancing the 5 pranas, the different 5 winds that we have within us, getting the right quantity and quality and pressure of blood back into the brain, feeding the whole nervous system. And that will ultimately bring our thoughts under control as our breath gets under control. And that naturally enables us to withdraw from the senses. And you can understand, really that our body is like this chariot. And our sense organs are like 5 horses that are connected to the chariot. And you've got the reins in between them. So our mind is like the reins controlling these horses. And if we don't keep control of those horses, they can take us anywhere. But if we can take control of our mind, then we can take control of these organs of the senses. And so that then gets us ready to be able to concentrate. And really, we're concentrating 24 hours a day on something. Sometimes we're concentrating on calling our parents. Sometimes we're concentrating on calling a customer. Sometimes we're concentrating on calling if someone's married here and got children, or sometimes we want to call another relative. No matter what it may be, we're concentrating on something all the time. And that is meditation. And the difference is from what we perceive to be meditation is that we have a flickering point of concentration. So through meditation, it enables us to bring a focal point in our life, no matter what it might be, that enables us to be connected to that and allow us to work through our qualities of our individuality to perform our duties, our wishes, whatever they may be in life, but maintaining this higher purpose, this goal that we have, no matter what it might be, through these internal practices of dharana, dhyana, and samadhi, which happens simultaneously, concentrating on an object, becoming absorbed in that object, and then becoming stable. And so that meditation is really what yoga is, because all of these steps are leading us to the state of consciousness called yoga, and that is meditation. So there are many ways to do meditation, which we will come to over the following days in the different sessions that I'll be bringing to you. But really, liberation of the mind is the key to blissfulness in life. Learning how to be in control of our mind, learning how to have balance. And just telling you about these ancient practices, these ancient indigenous traditions, doesn't help you to personally overcome the dualities of life in your individual life. Just in the same way, if I tell you about a light bulb in the room and electricity and it gives life, that doesn't, in a dark room, give you light. You have to turn on the light, and that dispels the darkness. In the same way, bringing these practices into any moments that we have to spare in our life, into our daily life, even if it's like 5, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, if we can bring something, part of it, it can have a huge effect on the quality of life and how we enjoy life. And we'll be talking about mantra, the powers of the vibrations of these mantras in other sessions throughout the 3 days. And basically, mantra is something that is an energy, a vibration that protects you from the cogitations of the mind, like the vrittis. And there's a really simple one that you might have heard of called Om. And Om is also known as pranava. And Om is a scientifically proven vibration. And it consists of 3 sounds. Now, in the system of grammar, we know that if you just put your hand on your throat, you'll realize that is striking your throat. That's where is. Oo is at the lips. And is actually striking at the top of your nasal passages. And that's why it's in the Vedas described as an uplifting sound. It's a naturally uplifting vibration when repeated, chanted, using sound. And it also is an uplifting vibration in the subtle realms within when we concentrate on it. And so it means that it can help us to cross the mind, the ego, and the intellect, which sometimes the individuality of those can leave us struggling to lead a peaceful life. And just in the same way that we take food, some people might take it every 3 hours, every 5 hours, no matter what your rhythm of eating food is. We don't eat once for 24 hours or once for 5 days. We take food regularly to constantly recharge ourselves. And in the same way, the more regularly that we are able to find time to practice yoga, even if it's just 5 minutes, it gives us a chance to recharge our batteries, restore our balance, to help us lead a more peaceful daily life. And so wherever you're going to do your practice, if you can find a peaceful place, whether it's in a group or whether it's in your own home, have a special place that you do it, have a stable posture, take control of your breath, and keep everything clean inside. Means, eating clean food as much as you can so that you can be healthy, and look inside yourself. Try to connect to yourself. Try to find out who you are by fixing your attention on one particular point, whatever it may be. And my teacher said this in a very beautiful way. He said that happiness is the aim of life for all of us, and nobody can achieve peace no one can achieve happiness without peace. And peace will come when our mind is tranquil, when it's balanced, when it's calm. And that will only come when we've got stable wisdom, stable intellect, stable knowledge. And that comes through the practices of meditation, which, as we mentioned, is the core of yoga. And all the practices before that are taking us towards the stage of inner peace and inner happiness. So that's what I wanted to tell you, why yoga is so important in these modern times, because I hope that you've seen that these simple practices, which, are so ancient, are as relevant today as they were then. And I would say even more relevant now, because we're facing more challenges on Earth than possibly any period of human history, through the stress of education, the stress of home life, the stress of what's happening on the planet, the stress of what's happening in our communities. And if we can find this place of peace, calm, and quiet, where we know really what we are, have understanding of what everybody else is, we'll really be ready to receive education, which is really what this Learning Planet Festival is all about, is how to learn as one family on this planet, as one humanity, bettering life for all. So I hope that gives you a flavor of what you can expect over the next few days. And perhaps if there are any questions, perhaps you'd like to highlight some questions, Muskan. And we can't hear you.
Yes, Divyaji. First of all, before we move to the questions, I want to thank you so much for this amazing, amazing presentation. There was so much that we learned about yoga, things that we did not know, things that we confused with general yoga and other things, amongst like a lot of what has been there. And for me, it was a learning process. I learned a lot throughout the presentation, and I hope everyone who's on the call, we have a good number of people, and everyone learned and will imbibe something or the other from this presentation today. As for questions, we had a question from Mr. Rohit while we had started the session. What was the reason you joined Sanatan Dharma and yoga?
Well, this is a very relevant question to this, because my background is that I went to very good Western education institutions in the UK. I was educated at Oxford, and I worked for, I was a college sportsman as well. I was the newspaper editor. I was always looking for the next mountain to climb and thinking, when I climb that mountain, I'm going to feel satisfied inside and feel that I've like reached my aim in life. And that started off with, when I was 10 years old, I said, I'll go to Oxford when I'm going to university. And I remember my grandfather saying, do you know what university is? And I said, no, but I'm going to go to Oxford. But my very first day at Oxford University, which was like my be all and end all, I kind of, within 24 hours, I was like, is this university? Is this Oxford? All this effort I did for it, and I still felt that emptiness within. So I went through a career looking again, always to fill that emptiness within, and having reached like great social status, great financial stability. Basically, I had pretty much what people want in the world. I wasn't a billionaire though, but I wasn't looking to be a billionaire. But I was very well set for life, and it was like I had everything in my hands, but yet I felt empty. And so I didn't go in search of Sanatan Dharma. Specifically, I was looking for what would relieve me from that sense of emptiness, and that led me to being a meditation group. And one day, for the first time in my life, I felt completely fulfilled, and I realized that this is what I had been looking for all along. I then found out that this meditation group followed Sanatan Dharma in the sense of Hinsa Yaha Du Yate Yasir Hidayam Itisa Hindu, meaning that who causes no pain to another, being the definition of a Hindu. And so that it was a way of living, a way of being, and a way of being aware of your real self, connected to yourself. And that's how I came into Sanatan Dharma, that I realized that this Patanjali yoga philosophy was the best psychology I'd ever heard. I was already trained as a psychologist as well, in addition to everything else that I had done. You know, I'd been in the field of art and literature and all of these kind of things. But for the first time, I was like hearing the most sensible, meaningful, practical way to find peace and happiness in life. And so I realized that this is the best way to live life. And that's what brought me into it. It wasn't because anyone said, oh, you want to be one of those, or oh, you want to do this. No, and that is the core of yoga philosophy and Sanatana Dharma, you know, me, is that these are practical tools, and it doesn't matter who you are, where you come from, what language you speak. If you practice these things, you will find that you get peace. Simple as that.
Thank you so much, Divyaji. That's a wonderful answer to this, and I hope what intrigues you the most about yoga out of all the wonderful things it has to offer? There has been a question for you, Divyaji.
For me, going into deep meditation is the you know, whether you're doing a posture, whether you're doing pranayama, you're always able to go into meditation and all of these things, because meditation is where you get that real sense of unshakable peace. And the extraordinary thing is that when you experience for yourself, you'll find that you're unshakable. You know, that in society, we sometimes say to someone, you're so sensitive. That sensitivity, or you're so emotional, or whatever it is, these things come when we're distanced from ourselves. And the deeper we go into ourselves, the more we have that depth of the ocean, that we're unshakable and yet able to work to, when I say work, I mean play our role in society, to serve the society, to share knowledge, to help people, to work collectively for everybody's benefit. That's what we get as we go deeper into ourselves, because we realize that no one's different from us. And so when we realize that, then we realize that we really, truly love everything and everybody. And then we want to help it because it's us.
That's just a wonderful answer, Divyaji. And with that, we've come to the end of today's first session and the opening ceremony. First of all, I would like to thank Dr. Bhaswati ji and Divya ji so much for today's amazing, amazing, amazing session. I had a wonderful time. I hope everyone who's been here till the end, who joined in between, had a wonderful time. And before we close the session for today, just a little disclaimer. The events for today have been added onto the chat. So the next session is at 5:30, which is again by Miss Divyaji. And it's Yoga Foundation for Life. Then it will be followed by the next session at 10:30 p.m. IST to 11:30 p.m. IST by Miss Jyoti Jo Mondal, who will be talking about managing anxiety by young people. And the last but not the least, and the great show for today is at 11:30 a.m. to 11:30 p.m. to 12:30 a.m. in the night by Miss Neena Rao, which will include chanting. So we hope to see all of you there and wish you a great, great, great day ahead. Thank you so much for joining us.